Hi everyone, and welcome to our product walkthrough of Xray Enterprise for Cloud. I'm Francisco Viana, Product Marketing Manager, and with me today I have Helder Ferreira, Director of Product Management. We're very happy that you're joining us today to discover more about Xray Enterprise, so let's jump right into our agenda and what you can expect for today. First, we'll share a brief introduction of Xray Enterprise, including the key features that it offers, and then Helder will take you through a product demo. At the end, we'll have 15-minute Q&A, so feel free to submit your questions in the right panel during the presentation, and we'll do our best to address them at the end. Let's get started. Xray Enterprise Cloud, the next level of native quality management. Xray Enterprise allows your team to create and manage multiple versions of the same tests, to find new ways to optimize test cases to cover 100% of your application's critical interactions in as few tests as possible. Trigger automation directly from Xray, and also you'll be able to automate the definition of test plans using standard Jira filters with JQLs. Finally, and acknowledging that Xray is a mission-critical app in the development lifecycle, with Enterprise, our customers will have 24/7 support, faster SLAs, and a dedicated support queue. Xray also performs greatly at scale, and now we're raising our API performance levels with up to 200 calls per minute and increasing Xray cloud storage capacity above 50 gigabytes. Xray Enterprise, test less, cover more, release faster. Getting started with Xray Enterprise. So, Xray Enterprise is already available for both Jira Cloud and Jira Data Center, and you can find it on the Atlassian Marketplace or on our website. Please note that Xray Enterprise always requires an active Xray license, meaning that you must buy first an Xray and then Xray Enterprise separately. Let's quickly go over some of Xray Enterprise's core features before Helder's demo. The first feature we'll go through is test case versioning. Your test cases are not static. They evolve when requirements change or improvements are made to the application under test. And even though Xray logs test specification changes in Jira history, it might not be easy to revert to a specific test case version. Now, with Xray Enterprise, you have test case versioning. You can create and manage multiple versions of the same test case, even with different test types, both manual or automated, to easily track or revert changes in your test specifications. In addition, you can have multiple active versions simultaneously and execute them all independently. Next, we have Test Case Designer, a feature that enables a new way to think about how you create and maintain your test sets. Benefiting from intelligent augmentation algorithms, test sets created by the Test Case Designer have been repeatedly proven to find more defects and find them more efficiently than unselected test sets. To do so, the tool carefully constructs combinations of test conditions to achieve as much coverage as possible in as few tests as possible. In the bottom right corner of this slide, you can see a representation of traditional test cases versus the test case design. In the test case designer, we're able to hit 100% of the functional interactions every time with less steps. Again, avoiding wasteful repetition while systematically covering all user-specific requirements and all of the application's critical interactions, doing so in the lowest possible number of tests. The test case designer will not be shown today, but feel free to reach out for a complete demo of the test case designer. Moving on to remote jobs triggering. Your teams are already using Xray every day, and they have their workflows built into Jira. Knowing how important it is to simplify the way teams work, communicate, and collaborate, users can now trigger pre-configured remote jobs directly from a test plan or a test execution. This option enables any user to trigger builds on your CI/CD tools without ever leaving Xray, thus improving testers' performance and streamlining your workflows. Finally, we have dynamic test plans. And again, requirements aren't always static, and when there are changes in requirements, we may have to update our tests and test executions. Then, we had to go back and update all of our test plans with new tests, which can be very time consuming. With Xray Enterprise and dynamic test plans, you can use Jira filters with JQLs that target labels issue types, versions, or any other characteristics of the tests, and automatically add them to your test plans. This allows you to be faster, more efficient, and to reduce manual effort of updating test plans. And now, I'll pass the presentation to Elder, who will show you all of these features in action.
Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another Xray Enterprise demo. So today we will show you some of the main features that we have available within Xray Enterprise. And as you can see, these features are focused on the enterprise customers to make sure that you have less work with your daily tasks. And without further ado, let's just jump into the demos. So let's start with test case versioning. With test case versioning, we have a new way to be able to manage multiple test versions within the same test. So let's start by creating a new test. So here we just type in a summary, test 001, and we just press create. That's it, the test is created. Now let's just go to the test, see the details. And so far, all the same, so we haven't changed anything on the test itself. But as you can see here on your right, you see that the default version is already created, so version 1. What does this mean? So let's keep adding some tests as we normally do. So step 1 and expected result, okay. A new step, step 2. With the same expected result, and a new test, step 3. So far, all the same, nothing new here. But what you can see now is that if we click this option here, you can see that the system is creating this as version 1, which is default test and manual type, okay? So if we now create a new version, what we can do here is that we can type whatever naming that we want for the new version. Let's call it just version 2 webinar. And we can copy from what we already have on version 1. So let's just press create. And as you can see, now we already have 2 versions of the test. Of course, that what I can do is I can go into version 2 and create a 4th step. So step 4, okay, and I press create. So on this version, we can see that I have 4 steps, but if I go back into version 1, I still see the 3 steps, the 3 initial steps. So this is actually the test case versioning working. So you can have within the same test key multiple types or multiple versions of the test. On top of that, and let me show you that, we can create a 3rd version, and we will copy from version 2. Okay, so here it will be version 3 webinar, press create, and here it is, we have a 3rd version. And what we can do here is actually we can change the test type. So for example, if I want to do so, I can change to cucumber test type, and then I can define all the scenario here. So, and as you can see, the system will create version 3 test type cucumber automatic test. And if I go back into version 2, we still have the manual version. So you can have multiple test types within the same test. Okay, so this is the enhancement that we are adding on top of existing tests, where you can add multiple versions and manage all these multiple versions. How then the system selects which version to use? We have the concept called the default version, and you can see it here. This will be the version that the system will use every time that there is a automatic adding or adding to a test plan or to a test execution, the system by default will select the default one. Of course, that we can change that. For example, if I want version 2 to be the default one, I just select here set as default. So this one now will be the one that Xray will use when adding, for example, to a new test plan or a new test execution. On top of that, what we can also do, we can add this test to a test run. So if I click here on test runs, I can select to execute in, and let's create a new test execution. Here, you can select what version you want to add to that test execution. So for example, let's use version 2, which is the default one now. And as soon as I press create, the system will create the test run, and again, adding the test version I've just selected. Okay, so version 2 had 4 steps, and here we have available the 4 steps. If we go back into the test itself, let me just go back in the test that we just created. What I can also do is check, actually, let me just open this exactly. We also have the Xray history, where you can see all the changes to all the versions that I've done. Okay, so we can see here that these were the changes to version 1, then I have added the second version, and then version 3. You can keep track of all of the versions that all the changes to the versions that the users did. Okay, so you can check here, or you can check actually per version, and the system will filter out and just show us the changes that have been done for a specific version. On top of that, if you find that you have a lot of versions and you want to clean a bit and manage a bit all the versions that we have, we can just go here and to manage versions. And here on this display, you can actually set as default, you can archive, and you can actually delete. If the test versions have been added to a test execution, the system will keep a copy for that test execution or test run, so we can still archive or delete here on the version. The main goal here is to be able to have multiple versions of the same test within a test key and not having to create multiple versions as our software or our process keep evolving and you need to generate new versions of the tests. So this is test case versioning, all the power that it will provide to the users to manage their tests. Let's talk about dynamic test plans. Dynamic test plans is a new feature that we've added to Xray Enterprise. And in a nutshell, it allows us to keep our plans up to date and automatically updated as soon as we have some criteria that are meeting the filters that we have created. So up until now, the only way to update the test plan was to go into that test plan itself, and then what we can do is just add existing tests. For example, we can create new tests, or we can add existing tests. We could select from the existing issues, or we could apply searches to our projects, and then we just select the test and we add to the test plan. But this quickly becomes very complex to manage if we have a lot of tests to maintain. So what we did is actually use the power of the filters already included on Jira, and we are adding this possibility to the test plan so that we can create what we call now dynamic test plan that will be updated as soon as we edit the test plan with the criteria that we set on the filter. Let's quickly try to do an example here. So this is a normal manual or legacy test plan, let's call it this way, where you need to add or to remove the tests one by one or just by selecting from a list. If we want now to change this to a dynamic test plan, the only thing that we need to do is actually start by editing the test plan, of course. Let's quickly open this in full screen and you will see all the tests that we have on this test plan. Here on the right, you do have a new option to configure the test plan. And here is where you can see that right now it's a static test plan. But what we can do is now select as a saved filter. And of course that what we can do here is just quickly selecting a pre-existing filter, or what we can do is just quickly create a new filter. And again, we are now using the filter options that we have for Jira. So nothing new, it's something that already exists and a lot of you guys already use on a daily basis. So let's start by selecting actually here a filter for a label that I have already created called Android. So the system Jira will filter all the tests that have that label applied. And what we can also do, for example, is actually go into JQL. Let's go a bit in more detail, and I actually want to select only the ones that have the status equals to resolved. I'm missing here the state and status to okay, here we go. Status set as to do. So at this moment, what we only need to do is save this filter. And let's call it Android tests. And of course that here you will define the permissions for the filter. Since I'm just the one using this project, I'm going to say save it as private. We select save and that's it. So the next time, and let me try to jump back to the other page that we were seeing. Now, if I go back and I select, for example, the saved filters, not sure if here it is, the system will now actually show us the label and the query, the JQL query that the system is using. So labels, Android, and now all the tests that will be included on this test plan is the ones that have that label. So if I saved, the system will now recreate, perfect, and here we go. This is the new test plan, and now it has become a dynamic test plan. Of course, that we can do the other way around. We can start by creating a new test plan and just select also to filter by an existing filter. Okay, what does this mean? It means that right now we have on this test plan 20 tests to do. Right? So if I go back into all the issues that I have and I select, for example, one that does not include that label, let's select this one. So you will see that this one does not have that label assigned as Android. If I go here and now I select that label, and of course, this is a test 62 manual test. I just updated this test to have that label. If I go back now into my test plan, the system will show me, actually I think I have it here open, here we go. If I go now into this test plan again, I will see that now we have 21 tests to do. So the system already included the label I've just created. At any given time, you can hover the filter query here, and the system will show you what is the query that is being applied to all the tests that are being displayed here. And if you want, you can go back into a static test. With this, with dynamic test plans applied, you cannot manually add or remove a test because the system is updating everything as soon as you edit the test plan. But of course, that if you want to go back, you can just go here, configure, and again select static. From this point on, the system will behave in the same way that it used to behave. So you can add manual tests if needed. You can add, remove. You can do all the operations. So in a nutshell, it's a quick and easy way to combine the power of the filters that we already have on Jira and allowing us to apply those filters to a test plan, making it a dynamic test plan. Every time that any of the properties of the test changes, the system will acknowledge that change, will add or remove automatically as soon as you edit the test plan. So, in a nutshell, this is dynamic test plans. The last feature I want to present today is remote jobs trigger. So most of the companies today have integrations with CI/CD platforms. We have the need to generate builds to when we start our testing phase. We have the updated builds or even previous versions or specific versions that we are doing our tests. To do and to trigger those builds, up until now, there were a couple of ways you could do this, but it always means that you need to leave your environment, trigger some scripts to generate those builds and to trigger those builds. With this new feature that we are adding to Xray Enterprise, we added at project level settings new configurations for the remote jobs trigger. It means that this configuration can be done once, and you can add here as many configurations as you want. And then trigger them within the tests or the test plans themselves. So, and to add configurations, first you just need to select which CI/CD platform you are using. Right now we are supporting out of the box Jenkins, Bamboo, GitHub, GitLab, and Azure DevOps. And the configuration is rather easy to do. You just input all the settings for your CI/CD platform, your job name, and you can also have parameters, right? So it's key value parameters. So you can use your own, you can input them here, but actually we also provide a couple of predefined parameters. For example, to send to your CI/CD platform the user that is triggering the build, or for example, the issue key that is triggering the build. And of course, then on your CI/CD platform, you can trigger different builds with different rules to have the build that the tester will require to do the tests. Okay, so once you have this set up, and actually I do have here one Jenkins instance. Here we go. Let me just refresh this. Here we go, all good. And it's waiting for the triggers, okay? So if we now go back into, for example, the test plan we just created by using Test Case Designer, you will see that we have now this option here to trigger the build. This option will display the configurations that we have set it up and is as easy for the tester, for example, to go here, click trigger, and that's it. The build will be triggered. And let me be fast. And here on Jenkins, you will be able, actually I was too late, that the build has already been done. Let me repeat this to try to see this happening in real time. So if I trigger the build here and I quickly go into Jenkins, we will see here displaying, here we go, it's spanning, it's doing the build right now, and it's done. So if this build has the output can also be included directly on Xray, meaning that you never need to leave Xray just to have the results from that test build. So in a nutshell, this is a way for the user never needing to leave their Xray instance and prepare everything that he needs or to trigger the build with the test results that can be then injected directly into Xray results. This is Remote Shops Trigger.